Welcome to the Lightforge podcast. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Hello. Hope you all have a good start to 2023. We are almost a day in. Well, we are. By the time you listen to this on whatever you listen to, if it's not live, it will be already be a day in, at least. So, hope you guys are having a good start to the year. If you're playing Arena, hopefully you're getting some good DK drafts because that's the only thing that matters. So, there's not much new stuff we can talk about today. The
There,
past
there-
two Light Forges have pretty much covered the meta, and nothing has significantly changed.
yeah, and we skipped one too, and there's still nothing that's
Yeah,
happening. So they did patch it, and
they
my
did.
predictions were 100% correct. The patch did nothing. And nerf Paladin though. We're gonna play Paladin in the Coop next. So, uh, we could not play the 50% win rate Paladin. Now we have to play the
45.
45% win
It's
rate Paladin.
45, yeah, and it's been, I think it's stabilized. Like,
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely stabilized into this. So right now, if you're looking at it, the other relevant classes are Druid, Warlock, Shaman, Demon Hunter. They go from 50% to 49%, but that's not a true reflection of their power, right? Like that's how much they win on average. When you get higher up, you still get gatekeeped by Death Knight. Um, we knew they weren't going to succeed. It's kind of impossible for them to succeed. So they did what we thought they were going to do, which is to take a stab at it with no hopes of succeeding and keep Death Knight not depowered. Because the way for it to be depowered, you really gotta kill all the Death Knight cards, and they're not willing to do that. It's a new class, so it is what it is, and it means Arena is pretty unplayable right now for anyone who's serious about playing the Arena. So I haven't played. We canceled the last stream. I mean, it was also Christmas Day, but it's just like it's in such a bad place right now. Um, so on that note, let's talk about what happened in 2022, the Hearthstone Arena, because this is our year end. I mean, we're in 2023 now, but this is basically our year end podcast, and this is also our preview to 2023 podcast. Even though we could do preview in 2023 next week too, because I highly doubt next week they're going to do anything either. First week of the month, I don't remember Blizzard ever coming out with any kind of patch or adjustment or balance thing. So either way, let's talk about 2022. This was the year in which I think starting around March or April, Matt London and his team first started rolling out the changes that they actually had input on. I think the arena officially went under the umbrella of that team sometime in January or February, probably January of 2022. And so they thought about it. They played with some ideas and they started implementing changes ahead of that first the first expansion release of 2022. So what do you think about let's put it in the big picture. The big change in Arena was, setting Death Knight aside, the big change in the Arena and the balance was that Matt London's team is now in charge of balance. So how well do you think they've done over the course of their first year?
Look, I think whenever you evaluate something like this, you have to kind of break it down into like categories, right? It's like when you're evaluating a rookie in sports. It's like, oh, how did they develop? And you kind of have to be like, well, this category great, this category still needs work. I think in terms of ranking the um optimism I have for the passion and the actual excuse my language, give a fuck like scale, they care. They actually care. They spend time to try and make sure that they're doing stuff that, even if in the short term the microcosm isn't perfect, look at current meta. Um, I think they want to overall create a game that is sustainable, that people enjoy, and I think most importantly, they care what players care about. which for years, this is a hyperbole, for many, many years, not only was Blizzard silent about anything arena related, it was very much so. And look, this isn't me sort of like putting words into their mouth. It's sort of like, look, if it sort of like if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it is a duck. Blizzard didn't care about the arena. They didn't care. Now, I'm not saying they like hate arena players, although some people might feel that way. But for years, they just rolled stuff out. If you remember, for years, people would ask Ben Brode all the time. It's like, what's going to happen with the arena? We going to get updates? And 3 weeks before the expansion hits, Ben Brode would say, "We care about arena. We love arena around here." And that was it. And that was, frankly, and we said it back then, that was insulting. That was like straight up insulting. Like, you obviously didn't care about arena to any significant extent, right? And Matt London really does. So I think that is just the biggest plus, period. There is a lot of optimism from me there. Just having somebody who pays attention to something and cares and listens and will sometimes reach out to the community to explain a few things about, maybe why things aren't perfect, what they're trying to do, and then to actually do it.
Okay.
I think the death. I think we've had some rough metas. Okay, like now on the flip side, I think we've had some rough metas. Some I think are very excusable. For example, when they first tried doing this, the first shift away from the previous, I'll call it Tien's micro adjust, right? We had a rough stretch there. I think that was perfectly excusable, and in fact,
was
better
that
than
rough?
I expected.
Yeah, I was about to say that wasn't really that rough. I thought they had a pretty good slash lucky like soft landing for their first.
It was still a little bit of rough gameplay, but better than both of us expected, because both of us were like, you guys gotta set on
and not better, not just better than what both of us expected, better than average.
Yeah,
better than the average arena meta while they were getting their first tweaks in.
I think the current meta is probably the biggest, for lack of better terms, stain on the pretty good work that they've done overall. I think it's the speed of things, just exactly how broken the current meta is. And by current meta, I'm lumping everything pre and post nerf to
since expansion launch, right? Since Lich King
since
launch.
expansion. Right, it's all the same thing. And I think some people might think that now is even worse in some ways because, for example, Malignant Horror was buffed. Malignant Horror is it was problematic.
But it wasn't. We were talking about this in last Lightforge. It was problematic, but it wasn't anywhere close to the best Death Knight card. Neither by win rate, nor by how it actually is, nor how we rated it. It was just everywhere because it had no runes attached to it. And it can single-handedly win the game.
Yeah, so right now it is it's very annoying. It's very frustrating. Like, Malignant Horror is probably the most frustrating card in Arena. It's not a problem. Like, it is, right? I think it's safely.
It's a problematic card. Like,
it's
in terms of its design. It's not in terms of its power.
Yeah, and you see it in all Death Knight decks. You could potentially see it in all Death Knight.
Just to put this in perspective, Malignant Horror right now, the win rate is 66.5% win rate, which for Death Knight is below Pandaren Importer, below Yamajar Deathbringer, below Tomb Guardians, below Corpse Bride, and obviously below like the real big hitters like Nerubian Vizier or Army of the Dead or Necrotic Mortician. So this is like, it's a premium card now, whereas before I think it was barely a premium card. If that, I wouldn't even have considered it a premium card before the buff. After the buff, it's kind of like a low premium card maybe.
Yeah, the problem is a common low premium card that you see all the time, that just And visibly, like it makes you upset, right? It's
Yeah.
one of those cards that makes you upset too
Yes,
because it sticks
exactly.
around the
It
board. It creates a very like real impact. Like you see it.
Yep. And what you don't see is when it becomes not unplayable, but less desirable to play, and your opponent doesn't play it. And you don't see the negative effects it has. But the win rates don't lie. Like, yeah, a good player can get a little more out of Malignant Horror than probably the average HS replay player, but not like that much more. I don't know how many people are super misplaying this card. It's not the hardest card to misplay, especially after the buff. I think before the buff, it was a little harder to. It was a little easier to misplay it. After the buff, well, by the way, the buff is that instead of using 5 corpses, it uses only 4 corpses now, which makes it chain real hard once the chain gets going, which is the exact opposite of what you want, right? Like in Arena, the problem wasn't like so much the initial part. The initial punch is hard, but it's the ability to chain and just end the game that was always the most problematic thing. So this is like Flappy Bird, right? Like Flappy Bird was bad, and it was kind of a barely above average card, really. Like it was a not even a premium card by win rate for Flappy Bird. So this is a much more powerful version of Flappy Bird, but it's just that design problem. Like this card should be banned from Arena, not because of power, but because who wants to play against this card? Who wants to play with this card? And banning it, I think, would help make Death Knight a little more approachable. Just take a look at the card and say, hey, look, it's an engine that does a ton of stuff and is really hard to deal with, and it comes out on potentially turn 4, more likely later on in the turns, but still. This is like not what you want in the arena. Like I wouldn't have a problem with banning this card. But win rate wise, it's barely above Chill Fallen Baron, which is that 3-mana 2/2 that draws you 2 cards. Like that's a good card. But I don't think anyone's looking at Chill Fallen Baron and being like, oh my god, this is the S tier card that is ending the arena, right? Anyway.
Um, so that's where we're at for the evaluation of Matt London's kind of initiation and half year plus on the modes team and sort of implementing their vision and their changes for the game mode.
Okay.
So overall,
oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I think overall, like look, nobody gives a damn about nuance anymore. Everybody wants you to compile something together, right? It's like a single draft score or a single grade. So I think I'll give Matt London and team something like a B. Like I think overall it was good. I think hopefully they learned a lot of lessons. But the B is kind of conditioned on like it's like you expect, for example, a rookie season for sports players to be kind of rough, right? It's like it's the exception to the rule that it's like basically people should come out the gate swinging and get everything immediately. And I think we have to remember that them going away from the micro adjust was really hard because they have to go from a spaghetti code, right?
Yeah.
Like they didn't understand. I think they never went out and said it's like we literally do not understand this. We have to redo everything. But that was basically what it was.
Well, they didn't have to redo everything. They're just doing it by hand now, so there's nothing to redo. They just like ditched it. Right, like it was something they didn't understand, couldn't use, and so they ditched it. Which is,
but it does make it harder for them. It's like they do.
I mean, they have to start from the middle, and their past data is less good, right? Because the past data is based on micro adjusts. I think you're generous. I think you're way too generous with a B score for Matt London and team for 2022.
Some of this is like looking towards the future.
Yeah,
it's like
okay, exactly,
exactly.
But like, what is potential? You can't evaluate 2022 and then say potential in 2023 as part of 2022. That's not how that works. You don't grade people based on their potential to do stuff in the future. You grade people for the year based on what they did in the year.
No, like, I think that this is no. It's sort of like what kind of
we're not talking about draft picks here, right? Like, I'm not saying where would I draft Matt London based on potential. I'm saying like just evaluate what happened in the rookie year.
For example, right? They can have a really rough year, but you look at it's like the sparks of brilliance or the some of the good plays that they had, and it's like okay, you had a lot of interceptions, but It's like, I think we can work, and that's good. That's a
I don't think
successful
that's
season.
part of your evaluation for the year. That's part of your future outlook. So I agree with you on future outlook. I think team's got a good attitude, and the team has done stuff that you can see what they're doing and trying to do, right? Even if they don't say anything, and they do say stuff, but even if they don't say anything, you can see what they're doing. You can see what they're trying to do. You can see a bit of what their philosophy is and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to poke at, and hopefully something big is happening next year because they've had a whole year to do the small stuff. And Matt London has hinted at something happening with Discover that is beyond just lowering the offering rates. We don't know what, but that in itself will be huge in Arena. And in Pipe Dream Land, now that we have Death Knights, maybe in the future other classes can get the Death Knight treatment too in Arena, in the sense of having the draft work out to be, if you're a mage, get frost spells, get more frost spells. Okay, that's a bad example. No one wants mages with more synergized frost spells. But you get the idea, right? It'll make drafts way more interesting. But that's all in the future. That's all in the future. 2022 for Matt London's team, I think started out with a nice soft landing where their expectations were low. They delivered high. Some meta things aligned in a lucky way so that everything was pretty good. They did small adjust, it worked okay. They did large adjust, it worked okay. They seemed to find the balance. They, got us a couple good metas in there over the summer. And then they started trying bigger stuff. I think after the Sunken City metas, they started trying this idea of, and even back then it was very obvious you can't mix old sets with new sets, but that's exactly what they did when Murder came. And it kind of worked for the first Murder meta. Murder wasn't super overpowering everything. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible, and they got the synergies that they wanted while highlighting Murder, right? Murder was very central to the first Murder meta, and every other set complemented it, and the power levels weren't so divergent. Remember that we predicted a lot of the Murder cards, neutral cards especially, were going to be like A tier and need bans or adjustments, and none of that happened because the meta that they set up actually worked out decently. Now, I don't know if that was blind luck or if they really had this prediction and then they were just right about it and they were confident going in. It's like, okay, this kind of mixing previously doesn't work, but it'll work here. But either way, they got it. So all throughout the summer, all the way until the middle of September, end of September-ish, everything was kind of good, okay, a lot of optimism. Then they started going down this path even further. They created more old set mixes, more of these wild metas. We've now been in, I think it's 3 wild metas in a row where there's one standard, not standard set. There's one set that happened after, I keep forgetting the set's name, the last December set. Ashes? Was that Ashes? The big power jump. Before Sunken City. Alteric Valley. Thank you, chat. Thank you, Legend Heart from chat. So Alteric Valley and post-Alteric Valley sets, which is under the new power dynamic of Hearthstone, the new power creep. Not the ones before. I know the ones before, the year before that, the 2 sets before Alteric Valley is technically not that long ago, but the power levels are hugely different. So from Alteric Valley and onward, they haven't yet added one new power level set in with whatever new set has been released since Murder was released. And the metas have just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. Because they succeeded the first time. I don't know how. I still don't know how. But whether intentional or by luck, I think it was a success. We revised our scores on some of the cards. Their take on the meta really worked to get an interesting dynamic going on with a lot of synergies, and then they just kept trying it, which if the first one worked, maybe you try it. Then the second one was bad. The second part of the Murder meta was bad because the new rotation that they came in didn't work, and then it was dual class after that, which was even worse. But you can maybe blame that on dual class a bit, right? Dual class metas are never good. So I think they started making some excuses for themselves and they kept going down this route. And when the Death Knight was released, rather than taking stock of the situation and saying, hey, Death Knight cards are all new cards, they're all on the Altaric Valley and beyond power levels, maybe we should put a couple of new sets in for these other classes as well so that this game will function. Instead of doing that, they said, no, let's just keep doing our old things. Let's bring back a lot of undead sets and, stuff to highlight all the new mechanics, just like we did with Murder. And Murder was great. Maybe Lich King will be great too. Of course, Lich King was not great, as we saw. And as a lot of people, most commentators predicted this. I think we did not. Because we were just I just wasn't looking at it at that time. I was more focused on the cards. But in retrospect, it was obvious. And even beforehand, a lot of people predicted it. And the meta was trash, right? And is trash. And the Death Knight, this is the worst meta that has gone on for longer than, 10 days in the history of Hearthstone Arena. I think everybody agrees with that point. It's just kind of objective. You can look at win rates. You can look at, anything else. And it didn't have to be this bad. They also adjusted it, and it didn't work, and we knew it wouldn't work, because just math-wise, it wasn't going to work. So I think if you're talking about what has the team learned, or what do you evaluate the rookie year, I saw a promising start, followed by what I consider dangerous, but on the ground functional and even more promising, middle area towards the end of summer. And then they gained too much confidence, and it just was terrible after that. Way worse than before they even started touching this thing. And that's real bad. If you're creating metas that is worse than before you started touching stuff, before April, the metas in the last few months have been worse than the metas since before they took over. That shouldn't happen. Because they're trying.
Yeah, so that I completely agree with. I guess my kind of thing is Death Knight was a new class is going to get released regardless, right? And I'm like, is this better than the old regime could have done? I have no idea, right? I have no clue, but
I don't think so. There's no way. To do this badly, you need to have this type of wild rotation. The very decision to use a wild rotation after 2 failed wild rotations, that's just hubris. That's just, here's our plan, we like this, and we didn't get it to work the last 2 times, but the time before that we got it to work, and so we're going to take another stab at it, at the cost of everyone's enjoyability if they failed again. And so far they succeeded 1 out of 3 times. And the biggest whatever change is going to happen, right? So at your hardest challenge up to this point, you went with the plan that succeeded 33% of the time, and not the plan that has succeeded 100% of the times you tried. Why would you do that? You would only do that because you want to. You want to, and you're the game designer or the balance designer or whatever, and you want your vision to happen in this game. And you value that beyond logic, proper analysis, listening to people, anything, right? You valued your vision, which comes at a cost, right? And the cost is we're here now, and we're going to stay here until whenever they change the rotation. Now, to their credit, they announced pretty quickly after seeing this meta that the next rotation was going to be a standard rotation. So we do have that to look forward to, and a standard rotation would be balanceable by the tools that they have, whereas this one just isn't. Nothing after they set the rotation, nothing they did mattered after that. It would just make everything 5% less terrible. And that's what they did. But what are you gonna do with that? So I would give them a C. There's ups, there's downs. This is a C level result for 2020, for 2022. Now, I don't expect 2023 to be a C again. Right, you're building in a lot of optimism, and also just a lot of, I think, looking to the future and what they are going to do and what they've said, and all the whatever stuff. And I agree. I would be shocked if 2023 at the end of it, I would give them a C again. I would be absolutely shocked if they're not at least at a B minus. But for 2022, I think it went off the rails at one point, and hopefully they take that as lessons, but it was a pretty painful lesson for the players. This is just a long time. This isn't like, hey, here's 2 weeks where your game sucks. It's like, hey, here's 3 months and 1 more month coming where your game sucks. Like, that's something that should have been avoided at all costs. And the first month may have been just, we tried something, it didn't work. The second month, a little less like, now you're really trying to push it, right? This is like Blizzard pushing warband stuff in Diablo Immortal. It's like, I get it, you wanted to try it, you got bad feedback. Oh, you're gonna try it again? Oh, that's probably not a good idea. But when you're knocking on that door the third time and you're trying it again and pushing it even harder, like, that's just on you. That's just on you at that point. Like, you're favoring your own vision over all on the ground feedback that's coming back and just objective numbers.
Yep. All right. So B from me, C from you, and some reserved optimism for 2023.
Hey, the next meta is going to be a standard meta. So, if they do an adjustment in a week after the standard meta comes out, we're going to have a good balanced meta with Death Knights. It may be less interesting, but it's not like this meta is interesting for the other sets that have been brought in. It's just Death Knight.
Yep. So look, I think this is going to be the... If you guys remember, if you are a long-time listener of the Lightforge podcast, and you will remember there have been end-of-year retrospectives in which we basically say, it's like, okay, so nothing will happen this year, because they have told us nothing will happen this year. Do not expect anything. And we were very resigned to that. And it's like, and if you get angry, that is your fault, because Blizzard has said that nothing will happen this year.
Yes.
So expect nothing. Well, expect the expansion to come out and for them to...
Like Blizzard basically told you, we were going to do an F job next year on the arena. And you're like, okay, we expect an F or we're going to get an F. And then at the end of the year, we look back and we're like, well, we got an F. But we expected that because they told us. So, it's better to be trying than it is for the old system, certainly.
But this year, you should have expectations. And if you are angry at the year, I'm not going to say your anger is justified, okay? Some of you out there are real weirdos. I especially if you're also part of Arena HS, some of you guys are real weirdos, like real angry weirdos. I'm not going to say touch grass, because that's been overused. Just find your happiness, okay? Find your happiness in 2023. But there are expectations going into this year. And I think Matt London wants there to be expectations. Yes. That's a good thing. They want there to be expectations. So I don't know what exactly is going to happen, but the training wheels are off now, right? They have...
The training wheels are still on. The training wheels are not off.
Well, they have tried out a few things. The new class has been introduced. And look, it's super rough right now. But, the new class has been introduced. We can now do big changes in the near future because the new class is, every single day that passes, it becomes less new, right? So, let's hope for a good year. Let's hope that there are big stuff incoming. I still believe at some point we're going to see not just sort of like this gradual kind of like linear growth or change, that at some point we're going to see some sort of big Arena 2.0.
Yeah.
Right.
That's got to happen. We've been talking about Arena 2.0 for way too long, and now it's happening, right? Like, they haven't said it's happening, but it's going to happen because they have a team and they're at least somewhat working on it. So we didn't expect quick work on Arena 2.0. We said there was no chance it was going to get released this year, even though some of you had hope. Why would you have hope on Speed and Blizzard? But Arena 2.0 being released sometime next year is not out of the question. And if Arena 2.0 is not released by 2024, then there will be problems. There will be like what's happening, what's been happening, right? Like, what are you doing? This should have been done way before that. So next year, I think, is the odds-on favorite for Arena 2.0 to come out at some point. And when Arena 2.0 comes out, it's going to suck, obviously. but it'll at least provide optimism that things will look better for the future. All right, so that's 2022 and 2023. I feel like we kind of mixed the two topics about how 2022 was and how 2023 is going to be. I do see in chat a really good comment, and I think it's worth highlighting. Stormpie says Hearthstone does give more priority to fantasy rather than gameplay, and that's true. And you can see that that's what Matt London and team has done in the balancing, right? Which is why do you have wild rotations? You have wild rotations because then you can get the undeads in for the undead. You can get the whatever synergy for whatever. You can bring the rogue secrets in when you add new rogue secret cards, right? You're trying to build the things that'll make the game interesting, that'll make the game immersive. Like, I get that. That's good game dev stuff. But I hope what the team realized that after the end of 2022 and the, what is this now, like 4 failed experiments of 2020 to end 2022 in terms of metas, is that the fantasy, the good game design, only works in a competitive game where you're facing one person against another person if there is some kind of rough balance between these people. If you just create the fantasy, but one person is going to lose a whole crap ton more than the other person, that is not a fantasy anyone wants. That is not like, yeah, I get to use rogue secrets. So what? I'm going to lose every single time. So maybe it was fun for me to build that first deck, but as soon as I realize that it's terrible, and that's going to come at a cost to me because arena costs, gold and whatever, it's not going to be a good feeling. So, number 1 should not be the fantasy. Number 1 should be the rough balance. Not perfect balance necessarily, but you need everyone to at least be in the same game. Once everyone's playing the same game, then you build the fantasy, right? Or when you're building the fantasy, you have to make sure it doesn't get in the way of everybody playing the same game. And that's the problem, is that they built the fantasy without the consideration that the meta's going to happen and no one's going to be able to play.
Yep. All right. I think that's good. I don't know. I don't have much more to say about that, except we are due for a big change at some point. If you guys remember when duels came out, I don't. They kept talking. They kept mentioning arena with duels, and that it wasn't just sort of insulting. I'm just like, do you actually believe this? I'm like, you can't believe this, right? Like this is very much so not the same thing. Just at a fundamental core level, it's like what the similarities are superficial at best. So
I think that they actually believed it because they didn't understand arena at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and
sort
they've
of like
shown
saying,
that they didn't understand arena at all for years. So this makes sense.
Yeah, like when duels came out and they kept talking about like the arena sort of format, it's almost like saying it's like, hey, baseball lovers, you'll love basketball.
Mm-hmm.
It also involves a ball.
There are
and
points.
Competition between two teams in which the highest points at the end of a set time structure or game structure wins. Don't you love that? It's like the same thing. There's balls. It's 2 teams. One wins based on who plays the ball better. It's like that's awesome, isn't it?
You also get to see people run a lot.
Well,
that's
that's guaranteed in basketball.
Okay,
Not
a
guaranteed in
little
baseball.
less so in baseball. Okay, fine.
Not guaranteed in baseball, right? But yes, it's kind of like that, in which you're just like, you're really pointing at these weird superficial things that don't have to do. It's like when people talk about their love of arena, it's like, what do you really like about it? It's like, ooh, I love the fact that you can get specifically to 12 wins or 3 losses. That's when I that's what really sparked
duels with 12 wins.
That
was such a bad decision. That was such a terrible, terrible decision that made sense for nobody and no game format whatsoever.
Yeah. So that's kind of like when they kept pushing it. I understand sometimes you have to do weird PR things. I'm like, first of all, you trying to pull from the dozens of arena players out there and convince them of this. I'm like, I don't. First of all, I don't know about this. I don't know how much resources you should spend trying to convince, like, the 20 people playing arena that they need to try out duels. But it's just an equivocation that I'm like, it doesn't work. I think everybody, it's like the people who really enjoy arena, it's like they enjoy the pure limited format of it, right? If there is a duels meta in which, now look, I don't know any duels meta, okay? I'm not loser PJ over here playing duels. But if it requires like you to put in epic cards that you don't have, legendary cards that you don't have, well, you're kind of screwed. So there is just nothing equal there, right? It is constructed mixed with some RNG and some,
Yep.
whatever in there. But no, you can appeal to the constructive people. It's like, hey, constructive people,
Yeah.
do you sometimes like having more RNG?
Yeah. Do you
in your
want
deck
to
building?
not be
Yeah.
100% sure of what your deck is, but mostly sure, and your opponent too, so you get a little more variety? And
Yeah.
that's what they're going for, I think, with duels. They just marketed it weird. Because
It
why
was
would you
weird
convince
marketing.
arena players to do stuff? Arena players are tiny. Convince your constructed players to try duels. The constructed players who are like not into arena because arena is like too much on the limited side, right? Like instead of having if constructed is 0 and arena's like we'll call 1, it's not even really 1, but let's just call arena at 1. Like maybe the 0 people don't want to get all the way to 1 because that's uncomfortable, but maybe you could do like 1.2, I mean sorry 0.2. We'll make a game mode for 0.2. Like that's how it should have been advertised because that's what it is. But anyway, um, let's end on a question from the goat. Question from the goat: what is your New Year's resolution for 2023?
Easy one for me. Do not mess up the kid. Okay. I have a kid now. If you guys are not aware, you should be aware if you watch.
How
Maybe this
how
is your first one.
how
But
would
do
you
not mess
mess
up
up
the
a
kid.
kid in the first year? What are the options?
Not paying them attention, not feeding them, injuring them. There are
Okay.
neglecting. Like there are many ways to do
Can
this.
you psychologically scar a kid at around 1 years old?
Yeah, kids feel pain, and like they yes,
No,
you
no, no. I
you
don't
you
mean like
can.
that. I mean like permanent, like psychological damage, or will they just forget all of it? Like, what's the science on that? Because I know you can physically maim them forever, right? Or they could die. But psychologically speaking, what's the science there? I haven't done research on it. Maybe I should. I'm not planning to psychologically scar my kid,
No, no, no.
before
Okay,
the age
this
of
is all
one.
right, guys,
But
guys. This is a very sus question. This is like if a guy comes up to you out of, it's like you're at a coffee shop and some creepy looking guy. It's like, hey, how long do you think it takes to cut up the human body into pieces small enough to fit into a standard wheelbarrow? It's like if somebody just asked that, I think you'd be like, wait, what? Like, why are you asking like about how much it takes to psychologically like damage a kid? By the way, if you don't know, ADWCTA is having a child very soon. Like frighteningly enough, very very soon.
I mean, we'll see, right?
We'll
Not
see on
not
the
the
kid,
yeah, yeah. Like we'll
or
see how psychologically damaged my kid turns out to be at some point, right? Not anytime soon. I'm not planning to traumatize it. I just we'll figure out how much effort, because it's all about effort, right? Like there's a lot of things you can't control, and then there's some things that I wouldn't say can control. I would say like can make efforts to control, and it's just how much effort you use to control that. And everybody has a line, and everybody has a preference. So we're debating right now how much effort to put into this. Like you guys seem to be putting in a lot of effort, right? Like four P's mom was there. Your parents are there. There's just one kid, like five people rotating in the house doing it. Um, I don't know if we're gonna go that hardcore. we'll see. I need to do some research, right? Like, because if the kid is gonna have future psychological damage that is like major from like earlier stuff, we're gonna step it up a bit maybe. But just thinking it through.
All right. Happy 2022. We look forward to 2023. That is it. That's it for today.
Have a good 2023, everybody. We'll be back next week for a podcast, but I really don't know what we're going to talk about because I think I mentioned it offhand before. There's almost a 0% chance we're getting an update in the arena this next week because they're just getting back to work. Hopefully it'll come the week after, but even that's a little rough. And again, I don't know what kind of update it'll be. The standard meta is not coming until the rotation. The rotation is probably not coming until the end of the month. I don't know what we're getting, but right now the meta is terrible. I don't play in the arena. We're going to do a coup. We'll see how that works. But Merps doesn't play the arena right now. We're just kind of all waiting for the meta to be something remotely reasonable. Not 59% win rate for Death Knight and somewhere between 48 and 50% win rate for 4 more classes. All right. Well, see you guys next week. Until then, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merp. See you guys.